Hello and welcome back to 13.3. In this video, we are going to be finding the sines and cosines of angles using radians. First of all, you don't need to put radians here. They're just trying to be super clear. If you see something with a pi in it, it's in radians, not in degrees. I don't expect you to write radians every time. That would be silly. So most of the time you would just see this, oopsies, you would just see this as cosine pi over 4. And the fact that it has a pi in it is telling me that this is in radians. The question doesn't need to tell me that. So first of all, just to kind of load it in your head, what angle in degrees would this be? Well, hopefully from my other videos that you've watched, you would know that this is a 45-degree angle. 45-degree reference angle corresponds with having a 4 in the denominator in radians. And there's no number in the numerator, it's just pi, which is a number, but you know what I mean. So this is in the first quadrant, so this is 45 degrees. Okay, so being 45 degrees, we could use our 45, 45, 90 triangle, or we could use the unit circle if you have that in your brain, and it's square root of 2 over 2. And sine of 45 and cosine of 45 are the same, right? Because our 45, 45, 90 triangle looks like this. So these are both 45-degree angles. Anyway, so they're going to be the same, right? The only time there would be a difference is if they're in a different quadrant, maybe one of them would be negative, or both of them, you know? But this is first quadrant, so everything's positive. All right, so let's look at these. So you have cosine 7 pi over 6 and sine 7 pi over 6. Again, the pi tells me that I'm in radians. I don't need it stated. 7 pi over 6. So first of all, what's the reference angle? Well, a denominator of 6 corresponds with a reference angle of 30 degrees. So the reference angle is going to be 30 degrees. Remember, a denominator of 3 corresponds with a 60-degree angle. Denominator of 6 corresponds with a 30-degree angle. They're switched. Okay, so this is a 30-degree angle, and we need to figure out what quadrant it's in. So if you looked at my tips video, tips on unit circle video, you might remember that if this number is 1 bigger than this number, then we're in the third quadrant. So this number is 1 bigger than this number, we're in the third quadrant. So we're over here somewhere. It's a 30-degree angle, so we're specifically kind of like that. Oops. Kind of like that. Anyway, I also need to look at what's going to be negative and what's going to be positive in the third quadrant. So all students take calculus. Both sine and cosine are going to be negative in the third quadrant. I could also see that by seeing that both x and y are negative in the third quadrant. I find that all students take calculus is faster because if once you have that memorized, you don't even have to draw it. Right, you just think in your head, all students take, oh, that's t, which is tangent. Tangent's positive, which means both sine and cosine are negative. So we know they're both going to be negative, and we know it's a 30-degree angle. So you can either, if you have the unit circle memorized, great. I tend to use my 30, 60, 90 triangles in my head. So this is 1, 2, square root of 3. The 30-degree angle is the one up here. That's important. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's the square root of 3 over 2. And then sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which is 1 over 2. So that is how that works. So basically, it's figure out your reference angle, which you can do using the denominator. Figure out which quadrant you're in, which you do by comparing the numerator with the denominator. So I'll go over those rules. This would be 1 over whatever the denominator is. So there's always 1 in the first quadrant. In the second quadrant, it's going to be the denominator, and then the numerator is going to be 1 less than that. So denominator minus 1. Third quadrant is going to be denominator minus, nope. I don't know why I started writing that. That doesn't make sense. Denominator plus 1, which is what we had here, 7 over 6, right? And then in the third quadrant, it's going to be 2 times the denominator minus 1. So for example, for the denominator of 6, this would be pi over 6, denominator minus 1, so 5 pi over 6, denominator plus 1, so 7 pi over 6, 2 times the denominator minus 1, so 12 minus 1, 11 pi over 6. Sorry, that kind of turned into a mess, but basically that's how you figure out what quadrant you're in without having to switch into degrees. And then once you know what quadrant you're in, you can figure out positive, negative. And then to find the actual number, you can use either the the triangle or the unit circle, whatever makes sense for you. Yeah, and so that is that. And let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.